Hello and welcome to PCI Webinars. Today's webinar, Beginning Readers 101, Emergent Literacy Made Easy, with Jill Burket Ragase. Jill has enthusiastically shared her passion for youth services as an independent library consultant for more than 4 years. She earned her MLS from the University of Kentucky and is a former children's librarian and juvenile collection development librarian for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. She is also the proud parent of 2 sets of boy-girl twins and lives with them and her husband Mark in Cincinnati, Ohio. Coming to you now from dark and cloudy Cincinnati, it's Jill Burket Ragase.
Thanks, Anne. It does not feel dark and cloudy if you have the soundtrack going in the back that I do. It sounds really fun here. So I'm excited to bring that kind of enthusiasm to our hour today. Anne mentioned earlier, I love talking to people, and please put questions and comments down in the discussion box throughout the time. Don't wait till the end. I love talking to you throughout. I feel like we all get more out of the webinar when we're all sharing and talking together. I am really excited to talk about beginning readers today. I have a passion for them in general, but as Anne mentioned, I have 2 sets of twins. My older kids just started 4th grade. My younger kids just started 1st grade. So this is my second as a parent going through beginning readers. And it's, I don't know if I'm happy or sad to say, I don't feel like we've made a lot of improvements in making it easy on parents in the 3 years that have gone by. So we're just going to jump in today and talk about beginning readers and how we can serve the parents and the readers to the best of our ability in a challenging situation. I thought it might be helpful to briefly look at how reading skills emerge over time. I thought this was a great graphic. I cannot take credit for it at all. This is from our local Success by 6 organization, and they were very generous in allowing me to use it for our purposes today. If this is helpful to you, you are allowed to reproduce it and personalize it if that's helpful to you. It's available down in the downloads box. So reading acquisition is more or less, as this chart shows, a linear process, but one of the biggest things to keep in mind is that the pace at which the skills are acquired varies widely, especially when you're helping people come in to support a school reading log assignment or something along those lines. Some children will enter kindergarten as fluent readers, and others are much further back as emergent readers. Some children will deliberately move from one stage to the next on a very steady clip, and others will spend large chunks of time at one stage or another. And all of these things are absolutely normal. While there are certainly economic, social, and environmental factors that weigh into the pace and competency of new readers at every stage, this is a process that is hugely individual. From personal experience, I have 4 kids. 3 of them are cognitively typical, and it has been a different experience with every single one of them. Beginning readers, the books, are designed to meet new readers where they are and to help them build the skills they need to move on to the next stage of literacy development. So let's take a moment and make sure we're sharing common language. What is a beginning reader? Beginning readers have lots of names. Easy readers, sometimes they're just called readers, easy books, everybody books. I like to call them beginning readers, and I have banished the word easy from our household and my children's school because to the children who are reading them, they are anything but easy. I dislike that term. And so maybe if you are calling them that at your library, reflect on it. Books for new readers tend to have a few characteristics that are not required for other books. The font should be large, clear, and readable so the eye easily knows where to go next. You may have noticed that the font size on these books is often larger. A child who is beginning to read is training their eye to travel from left to right across the text, and large font helps build those eye muscles. The vocabulary is generally limited to words that are sight words. They're now sometimes called fry words, but they are words that are easily decoded using the word of phonics, or they are short words that the children are memorizing. Research shows that beginning readers are able to see 5 letters simultaneously, whereas as you develop your skills and your eye muscles and your reading abilities, adult readers can see 9 to 13 letters simultaneously. As a result, children beginning to read find it easier to decode words with fewer than 5 letters. As their eye muscles develop, children can handle longer words and sentences as well as unfamiliar words. Eventually, children make the shift from decoding words that they read aloud to reading for meaning. Sentences in these books tend to be simple and they do not extend over the page turn. And of course, our illustrations are, I assume, everybody's favorite beginning readers, Elephant and Piggy. I feel like Mo Willems has set the gold bar, the high standard, the gold standard for beginning readers, and everything else sort of falls short. Beginning readers should appeal to new readers who are generally 5 to 8 years old. The illustrations are critical in books for new readers and need to directly reflect the text, helping to give clues about harder words and to tell the story. Emergent readers use several strategies to predict what a word is, and often use the illustrations to confirm their prediction and build confidence. You may have encountered a concerned parent in helping them find a book, and they might be worried that their child is using the illustration as a crutch, or they're having a challenging time telling how they're doing, and they may say something like, "Oh, she just looks at the pictures and guesses." And sometimes as a parent, you're worried, what does that mean? My child's not developing. Take this opportunity to reassure parents it's all part of the process, that illustrations are part of how literacy develops, and it is nothing to be concerned about. Let's chat for a minute about selection criteria and elements to look for in building a beginning reader collection. I love the Hornbook, as I know a lot of librarians do, and Roger Sutton, who's the editor-in-chief of Hornbooks, has a great quote that I wanted to share today. He says that easy readers help children to independently enter the world of story with a beginning, middle, and end, with just enough picture to help you along without making you feel like a baby. And really, that's the crux of it right there. Beginning readers should help a child gain reading independence. They need to walk a fine line between babying them and appearing insurmountable. So how do we do that? We want to look first at structure. Short declarative sentences, sight words or words that are phonetically discernible. As we said before, no more than 5 letters in a word. Especially at those early levels. And you also want to look for repeated words and phrases. Compound words need to only be made up of 2 sight words. The example I wrote down for us was snowball, because those are 2 words that are fairly easy for children to decipher. Any longer words need to be accompanied by context clues and illustrations. We talked a lot about font on the previous size. For reference, you're usually talking about an 18 to 20 point font. New sentences need to begin at the start of a line. So trying to think of a good way to describe this. I did not write down an example for myself. If you're going to have two sentences on the same page, you do not want the second sentence to begin on the same line as the first. You want some nice space between the two. Lots of white space is really important because you're really talking about developing those eye muscles. Aside from these beginning reader specific characteristics, you want to apply all the regular criteria that you use for picture and chapter books to these books in equal measure. So anything you would look for in an illustration in a picture book as far as quality or style, you would look for here. I also really like if to look in beginning readers at what they choose to illustrate and make sure that it is drawing attention to the most challenging part of the sentence. The example I have seen used a lot is the word backwards. That's a really long word for a first grader, but if the illustration shows someone walking backwards, they can usually use the contextual clues to decipher the word. All that kind of stuff makes them feel like hot stuff. Does anybody have questions about reading acquisition, how to collection development aspects of beginning readers? If you've got anything like that, drop them down in the discussion box. Or if you've got specific questions you're hoping we get to today, put those down in the discussion box and I'll make sure we hit those as we move along. Otherwise, I'll jump in with a little bit of backstory so we can understand how we got to where we are today. The first Easy Readers were produced in 1857 and were an immediate success with the public. Since then, more and more publishing houses have developed Easy Reader imprints and series. In 2006, beginning readers received renewed attention when the ALA presented the first Theodore Seuss Geisel Award for the most distinguished American book published for beginning readers. The award recognizes quality in books created for this special audience and publicizes and rewards the efforts of the authors and illustrators that create them. In 1992, we took another nice step forward. HarperCollins revamped the I Can Read logo and jacket design and added the three-step leveling system that they continue to use in their paperback editions. You began seeing new topics like poetry, mystery, science, sports, and historical fiction. The line is currently expanded again in the past 3 or 4 years with the lower end, the I Can Read and the Easy to Read imprint. Macmillan also now has an Easy to Read imprint that was relaunched by Simon & Schuster. And they have recommissioned a lot of their backlist with new covers, which is really great. And I noticed in the stack we checked out most recently, there was a pronunciation guide for any of the words that were over, say, 2 syllables, which was also really nice, and it had a little glossary. And we have continued to see the expansion of nonfiction readers since the adoption of Common Core. And so you might kind of look at the linear progression and say, oh my gosh, we've got a huge selection and the publishers are putting levels on things and everything is good. Except every time I walk over into the beginning reader section, I look like this poor little girl on the end. I'm guessing if you are a parent or have had to help a parent find a beginning reader recently, you know that the leveling schemes used by the publishers leave a lot to be desired. The sea of differing publisher leveling schemes, differing vocabulary standards, and the generally vast range of reading abilities at work are enough to make you crazy. And I thought we'd take a look at a couple examples of why dealing with beginning readers are so challenging and then walk through some things that we can do to make it easier both on readers and their parents. This is a level 1 reader. It's from Random House's Step Into Reading series. It's a little hard to see, but the circle at the top says level 1 new readers. If you opened up something expecting level 1, this one looks great. The font is large and legible. The illustration provides those contextual clues that are so important to emerging readers. A parent could pull this level 1 off the shelf and be completely satisfied. It looks like what you assume you will find in something labeled level 1. That same parent, fresh off their success with One Little Fish, pulls off the next book on the shelf, also labeled level 1. This one from DK Readers, level 1, that circle at the top says beginning to read. And you can see as we compare these two, I mean, how could this not drive you crazy as a patron? These are both labeled level 1. This is what parents and less informed staff members encounter when they come over to the beginning reader shelves. One has one 4-word sentence on the page, and the other has 4 sentences, one of which has more than 15 words. It's hard. It's really, really challenging. And I think it's hard both for the staff and for the people coming in to look for books. I checked this Star Wars book out on purpose to scan it for this webinar. But of course, my 2 first graders saw it and wanted to read it. And they're not able to read it independently. My daughter was really upset because she wanted to take it to school because they have independent reading time every day. And I wrote down her words. It says 1 right on the front, and I am in first grade. And I think that's a fair expectation. And we don't want to cause frustration in early readers. Learning to read is challenging for many students. And you pull something off the shelf and it says level 1, and you open it up and you're like, why am I not able to do this? Was her reaction, and it crushed me. Elizabeth says it drives me crazy as a librarian. I am with you. Karen says, I encourage parents to open each book to see if they think it might work. I do too, absolutely, because what else are you going to do? It's so challenging. So I have been this hypothetical parent, and even though I know I should know better, here is what happened to me next. And this is actually the second time I've done this webinar. I initially did it when my older kids were in first grade. And I should know better, but I did not. I took the Henry and Mudge book out the first week, and it was a great fit. And it said, I can read my first reading, HarperCollins, level 1. So using my librarian sleuth, I went into the catalog and I searched up all the books from this publisher at this level, thinking they must all be the same. My child liked them. They were on the right level. What could go wrong? You can see as you compare the 2 images here, both of these books are HarperCollins I Can Read, my first reading book. The one on the left does all the things we talked about. It's got nice large font, 2 sentences not in the same line. The illustration clearly depicts what's going on. The one on the right, there's nothing technically wrong with it. It's just not as great as the one on the left, and they're not the same level. They're not for the same reader, but they're labeled as if they are. Mariana says, our children's staff scan the books and use level stickers instead to relabel and try to keep things consistent. We are going to talk about that. That is one of my favorite ways to deal with this problem. So what can we do? Option 1 is exactly what Mariana has described. Collection-specific leveling. Some libraries create their own leveling systems and label each book accordingly. I previously worked for a library system that leveled the readers, and I have to tell you, it is absolutely wonderful. We had lots of great signage, and after you walked parents through it once, they knew right where to go. Similar to this one, ours was color coded, and so you would know my child is a yellow level, and anything in yellow will work for us. It's really nice customer service. Your less experienced staff will also really like it. At the library system I came from that used this, they had some branches that did not have a full-time children's person on staff. So there were only certain times of the day that there would be anybody there who specialized in serving children. And this was such a huge improvement for the rest of the staff who were there, who could finally help people without being, reading experts. The other nice thing about this is that most OPACs are flexible enough with their cataloging fields to allow local descriptors. And you can actually, I have provided an example, the Nashville Public Library does this, for example. You can read the descriptions for the levels and then click on the level you like, and it will do a search of just yellow readers, for example, and then you can place your holds. And it really makes nice consistency. Oh, look at that. This is the Nashville Public Library. I forgot I had put this here. They've also got a great blog post that is linked down. It's one of the items that's down in the downloads box. So I encourage you to get all the material that's down there. They have a great blog post about how they choose to level their readers. And when you, as I said, when you click on the rectangle that best fits your need, the OPAC takes you right to the results for that level. Oh, sorry, I was reading my notes. It's a really nice system. I wish the images were a little bit larger, but I think this is a really great illustration of, if you take that first slide that we started with today and look at the steps that you take as you acquire reading skills, these 4 examples really line up nicely with that and are a great example of how you can level your own readers. Of course, the downside of this is that it's very labor intensive. You have to go through your backlist and label all the books you currently have. It is staff and time intensive. And then going forward, it does slow down your book processing time to get the books on the shelves, because someone has to come in and put their hands on every new title that enters your system. So pros and cons, but if you're capable of pulling it off, I would say this is the best system I have interacted with from both a staff and a parenting perspective as far as interacting with beginning readers. It really nicely, Mariana's word consistency just really keeps coming back to me. It takes out all of the silly nonsense that happens with the publisher identified leveling. Erin says, we did it and it did take a while, but it was worth it. Oh, good. Erin, do you use color coding? Can you take just a few minutes to put in the discussion box and tell us a little bit about your system and where, what library you're from, if people wanted to take a look at your catalog and see what you guys are doing, if you don't mind. I love hearing about other people's experiences. But I think if you're able to pull this off, I think it's the way to go. I worked at the library when we went to a similar system, and it did take, I want to say, the better part of 6 months to get it completely up and running. And it's amazing how long books will be checked out and come back and still need to be leveled. While we wait for those comments to come up, let's take a look at option number 2. We have to start by forgiving the Dare County Library, both for using easy and using it as a misspelled abbreviation. We're going to let that go because it is otherwise a fantastic overview. In this option, you create a cheat sheet that can be used by both your patrons and your staff to navigate the differences and levels between publishers. So if they liked the Dial Easy to Read Level 1, a similar book might also be a My First Hello Level Pre-1. The big pro here is that it's really easy to execute. You make up your equivalency chart, you decide what is a good fit for you, you post it, you train your staff, you draw the customer's attention to it, and you're ready to go. The cons here are, as we mentioned, you do get tripped up if you have two books from the same publisher that are different. And of course, it is still labor intensive for the browser who is now checking publisher information before checking out a book. It's not ideal, but if option 1 is completely off the table, I do think this is a solid plan B. You're providing way more information than the average parent is going to glean from the situation independently, and it will be a huge help to browsers. My children's school, the first grade teachers, we're not allowed to do paper flyers. They banned paper flyers, but with the school librarian and principal's blessing, I made up an equivalency chart that I have found useful in helping my first graders. It is this, oh my goodness, look at that. The word went over the edge of the slide. Let's pretend that didn't happen. This is my equivalency chart that went out with the first graders with the support of my children's school this year, which was a huge help. It is available down at the downloads box. If you would like it, you are welcome to use it to create your own signage. Please keep in mind that this is based on my experience and my opinion. Edit it to match your collection and your community as you see fit. But the library closest to our house does not have any signage or leveling, and so this is kind of the cheat sheet I made for placing holds for myself, and I thought if I would find it helpful, maybe other people would too. Let's see what we've got going in our comments. Brianna says, we also sort books by color, blue, green, red, and yellow, but is not reflective in the catalog. This makes it great for shelf browsing, but a little challenging because the librarian or patron has to check each section for a particular item. Absolutely, and that's another middle ground in that first option we talked about, is a lot of what takes up the most amount of time is going in and touching the cataloging record for every single beginning reader book and adding a local descriptor and then making sure that your software is working with your local descriptor. But as Brianna has noted, you can take that piece out entirely, at least to get started, and add it later if it becomes more feasible, or not at all, and simply label the physical books, and that will also be hugely helpful to your patrons. Erin says they also use color coding, and they keep charts at the end of each shelf so patrons know which level is represented by which color, and it has made browsing easier, but she agrees the staff has to check the section a little more thoroughly. Absolutely. Option 1 is really helpful, but it's definitely time intensive, which makes it cost intensive in terms of staff time. Marissa says, I'm so hesitant to do any internal leveling because I'm afraid of inconsistency, multiple staff members, staff turnover, etc. Will we discuss how to make leveling less subjective? I do not have a specific slide on that, Marissa, but I can share my personal experience with you. And if you are a librarian who is currently using this in your library, if you could share your experience as well. At the library that I came from, we had one staff member who worked in the same building with technical services, and when the books came in, we had one person deciding on the leveling of all the books. The other thing we did was we used an equivalency chart, sort of like this, as a baseline, which would tell us, you know, most of the Blue Apple books, flip-a-words, are going to be the red level, so that you would have that base knowledge before you went looking at the books. And then we also had a printout that was similar to what you see on this current slide of an example of what the page will look like with the number of words on each section. I will say, after the longer you do it, the quicker you get at it. But in the beginning, it is labor intensive and time consuming. It's nice to have reference guides that you can reflect back on, and kind of a cheat sheet of, we even got into, when we got fairly far into it, we even had percentages. So you could look at this, and I'm making this up because I don't remember the exact percentages, but you could look at it and say, oh, most of the Penguin Young Reader level 2s, 86% of them were in the blue level. So you could kind of look at it and go, now you're really choosing, is it blue or orange? And then you could use your printout sheets to kind of help you make a determination. It's not going to be perfect. And I think you need to give yourself a pass. It's never going to be 100%. The thing to keep in mind is that you are improving the situation so much from what you started with. What you started with was, it could be anything. And now you're looking at it going, maybe it's blue, maybe it's orange, it's right on the edge. Erin says, kids love using the color coding charts too. It gives them some freedom when they know they can look within their reading level. I love watching them browse for themselves. I agree. I will say this is one reason why I frequently, when my kids are this age and we've just now started redoing it, I drive to a library system that is, I drive past probably 6 branches to a library that is 25 minutes from my house, so that they can sometimes, occasionally pick out books for themselves, because they feel so amazing. Like, they are big kids and they know anything in the blue area, I'm blue. Anything in the blue area is a book for me. And it's not, mom brought home a stack of books and, some other person, usually mom, has decided these are the 6 books I'm going to read. But they look at the shelf and it's, I can read anything on this shelf. It's so empowering for them. Brianna says, the plus side of not having it in the catalog is we can always change the color if we talk about it and decide a change is needed. That is a great point. Absolutely. That is absolutely true. The great thing, and it doesn't take up any more, you don't have to go back to tech services and say, oh, hey, we talked about it, I'm really, really sorry, and now I'm going to impact your day. You can all talk about it and say, oh, hey, I was helping somebody, and I picked up this level blue, and I really think it's more of an orange. Come to a consensus and stick a new label on it. Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. That's a great point. Carrie says, I believe the equivalency chart will be the best option for our branch and possibly our system as a whole. Our items float. That's a good point. And color coding would not be an easy option. I do agree that we need some type of helpful signage or literature to help parents and staff. Absolutely. And that's what makes this second, the equivalency chart, a nice option. If you have items where your collection is so large, at PLCH, you've got 41 branches. The collection is so large that it's, I can't imagine how much time it would take to recall all the titles and get everything relabeled. It's not a feasible option there. But the equivalency chart is great. You can brand it for your library. You can look at some options in the communities you serve and see whether it needs any tweaking. And then when you post it, you've provided a great service to people, because especially at places where you have one point where people are interacting with the staff, and it might be a librarian and it might be a circulation clerk, regardless of that person's background or education, they can go over and help a parent find the book to meet their child's needs. It's a customer service win all the way around. Elizabeth says, do you put books in order by spine label within each color? Brianna said yes. I will say yes also at the library that I came from that did this. So in the blue section, they all said BR for beginning reader. And the first, I want to say 3 or 4 letters of the author's last name. And so they were alphabetical by author's last name, all the blues. And then you would go to red, and red would be alphabetical BR by the first 4 letters of the author's last name. Erin says that's how they do it as well. Yeah. Because I think otherwise then you would have them alphabetically, but all the colors would be jumbled. Which I mean technically would be fine because you could still tell a parent any of the blues are together. But I do have to say, I love the empowering experience of telling a kid you could get anything in this section and you don't have to be paying attention to the label, which is kind of nice. But yeah, I think either would work, but that is, in my experience, how it was handled. Keep typing your questions and comments down in that box. We will continue to work them in. Option 3 is staff education, and this is probably a good idea even if you select one of the previous options or some combination of them. It is really important, I think, to have realistic expectations. I had probably been a dedicated children's staff member in a system where the children's staff worked exclusively on a separate floor just for children. I was probably there for 18 months before I had that equivalency chart like in my head and could just do it. It's a lot to ask of your adult reference staff or anybody at a shared customer service point, circulation clerk or someone of that. And especially if you have a system where you have a lot of part-time people. It's just a lot to ask. So I think it's important to have realistic expectations, but it's also worthwhile to make everybody aware that this is even an issue. They could just have absolutely no knowledge of it. And I think it's worthwhile to make everybody aware of the challenge, even if the ultimate answer is that they might still come find you every time as the person who knows the answer. At least they know what they're facing. The nice thing about this is that if you have no system and you're relying on your staff, you get really great one-on-one readers advisory opportunities. You get to spend more time with your customers, getting to know their specific needs. If your library does an annual staff education day, or if you have 15 or 20 minutes during a staff meeting that you devote to continuing education or just a topic that needs to be discussed, I encourage you to pitch this idea to the people who are in charge of organizing the agenda. They might appreciate that that you have an idea, and B, that you're willing to fill the time with great content. It's probably going to be really appreciated. Glenda says, we just started putting ours in order by spine label within each color, and it was an eye-opener because we could see what levels we needed to order more of. I'm so glad you said that, Glenda, because it's been such a long time since I personally did that first round, and you are absolutely correct. When we did that, level blue was our, I don't want to use the term easiest. It was our first level, our emergent reader level. And once we got them all laid out, we discovered that up on the orange end where we had Nate the Great, we had like 4 sections of books. And down in level 1 where we had Flip a Word and Biscuit, there was like 2 shelves of books. It is both a blessing and a curse because it's really hard to order books sight unseen to make sure they fit your levels. But you're librarians and you will figure it out. You will use the equivalency chart to take a good stab at it. But it is really nice from a collection development standpoint because you can really visually, crisply address your needs and know where you need more or less. Just want to make sure I have all the comments. Okay, good. let's talk about some tips and tricks. These are just some recommendations from my personal and professional experience. If you have others to share, please definitely put them down in the discussion box. Stock the classics. Parents love classics. They are always asking for titles that they loved as a kid and remembered learning to read with. The photo on the right here is my husband's childhood copy of It's Not Easy Being a Bunny, copyright 1983, and it is beloved in our household. He called his mother and asked if she still had it, and she keeps everything, so of course she did. She brought it up, and it started off him reading it to the kids, and now the kids read it to us, and it's a whole full circle of life thing that has made everyone so happy. So I know even if you look at it and you're like, no one's going to want that book, or they update it and you think, well, it's not as great quality as what's available now, consider it. Consider stocking the classics, because the person coming in to check it out may not be the child but the parent, and it's just more variety. More variety is not a bad thing. Replace backlist titles. Let's be honest, kids are kids. They are going to judge a book by their cover. And even if your copies of Biscuit are totally serviceable, consider upgrading to the current cover. We have found that fresh jackets really impact circulation. It's a far easier sell to the child involved if the cover looks like something they want to read. And it kind of ties in nicely with the classics. Just go for the updated cover. Even if your old copy is still in okay shape, you will find that it goes out far more than your old copy did. As much as you can, go for series and shelf them together. The studies show that readers gaining confidence really love series. They read a previous title, they feel confident in picking it up, they already know how to read, say, the character's name, so they don't have to, it's one less thing for them to have to worry about. And that's really what kids love about series. There's so much in their world that they don't control themselves. And a series is you're going to a known location with known characters, and you are going to get out of it exactly what you expect. Kids in this age group really thrive on that, and it's really great for building their confidence. Weeding, I say weeding in every single webinar. Weeding is so important. If you've ever been in my weeding webinar, you know I have strong feels about weeding. I think it's especially important for this section of the collection. A lot of the books are paperback, so weeding for condition is going to be very important. You can run those reports and see what is going out most. And so maybe if you take off one super battered copy and you order 3 in its place because that's what someone is looking for, you can pull out the stuff that's not going and move it along to a new home. You might take a peek at it. Is it correctly leveled? Is it an exception to your equivalency chart? Could it use a tweak of cataloging? But don't be afraid to move things out of this collection. It may see greater turnover than your other sections. Let's see, Lisa says, if you put them in order by their levels, but don't change that in the catalog, how difficult is it to find a specific book? Say something is on your request list, how do you find it? In my personal experience, other people can chime in with theirs. We had 4 levels, and the entire beginning reader section was maybe three aisles of 2 or 3 sections. So you're not talking about a huge collection. This collection is usually one of the smaller in your system. So you're talking about only having to look for it in maybe 3 places that are all right next to each other. So it did at first cause some friction with the clerking staff, and they felt like we made their lives more challenging. And we did. I mean, and I do think that you have to own that and say, yeah, we have made it harder for you to find books on the pull list. Absolutely. And I think that's why the education piece is also really important. And opening up the books or showing them scanned insides like we saw in today's presentation so that everyone can be on the same page about why we've made something that used to be straightforward a little bit harder. Elizabeth says, I struggle to find enough good titles to purchase, especially for emerging readers. I agree. I find that first level to be the hardest level to collect for. And I don't have like a magic bullet that will make your life suddenly easy there. I think that is the area in which there are the least number of titles available, and quality becomes a big problem. I will say after seeing what our school district used, they had readers that they were buying from the company that they purchased their reading curriculum from. One of the libraries I worked at then ordered some of those to kind of beef up that section. And they were the same titles that the kindergarten and first grade teachers were sending home in backpacks and had in their classroom libraries. I will say it was a compromise because the quality is not as great, and it's not, and I say that both in terms of binding and durability, but also in terms of story and illustrations. So it's one of those areas where I think you kind of have to pick your poison. Either you're going to have multiple copies of less titles, but you know that they are all amazing quality, or you're going to go for having a wide collection with a lot of titles, knowing that some of them are going to be frequently in need of replacement and or not meeting the quality you normally look for. And kind of figure out where your balance lies, if that makes sense. Mariana says, it's not a lot of time, but it does take extra staff time to find. We've decided that it makes more sense to add shelf locations in the catalog. Yeah, I think that is something you run up against. Brianna says, what is the language you use to help parents determine which section would be appropriate for their child? We had a sign very similar to this one here, and it's available down in this sign is available down in the downloads box. Also down in the downloads box is a link to several libraries. It's not an exhaustive list, but several libraries that level their books and the signage and verbiage that they use. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at those. Let's see, it can be difficult to convey that the books are meant for kids to read by themselves, whereas picture books, yes. Brianna is making the point that sometimes the reading level in a picture book exceeds that of a beginning reader, and that is a challenging education point for parents and staff, and it absolutely is. And that's one of the reasons why I like calling the books beginning readers versus easy readers, and including lots of signage and doing the color coding to really communicate this is a section for kids looking for books to read by themselves. And I think you can be as explicit as that. But definitely look through the materials that we've gotten here today to see what other people are doing and kind of feel out where you are in the world of doing this based on what you see for other people, because it's going to be different in different places. But there's lots of resources down in that downloads box to definitely take a look at. Very briefly, because we're coming up on 5 minutes, I want to put in a plug for ebooks. I have to tell you, I was very skeptical about this. I never in a million years thought I would be a parent who let their first grader read on an iPad. And then, like all things in parenting, when actually faced with the situation, I ended up doing the exact thing I said I never would. In our case, my children brought home a subject-specific reading log, as in on Monday, please read a book about an animal. On Tuesday, read a book that rhymes. I love teachers, but these first grade teachers in our school make me crazy. After about 2 weeks of carefully placing holds and picking up materials, I kind of completely hit a wall. I am now getting about half of our books as ebooks, and it has made my life so much easier. We are, of course, still doing tons of traditional reading materials, but ebooks have really made the homework aspect of reading a lot more streamlined and efficient for me. So I urge you to consider ebooks, even for this younger portion of your population. Overdrive can accommodate this in your subscription. And once you've got some titles that you can sell parents on, you can kind of pick up steam from there. I am now talking them up to other parents like crazy. And you do kind of see the aha moment when everyone's like, oh, so when it's Monday and it's 30 minutes before bedtime and I need a book about an animal, I can get one really quickly. And the answer is you absolutely can. That is all of my prepared material for today, but we do have 4 minutes left. So if you have questions, please put them down in the discussion box or tips that you can share. I encourage you to go through the materials in the downloads box and take a look there. All of those charts that I showed you in the slides today are available. Anything that I have created, you are welcome to adapt for use at your library. I am happy to share my materials with you. And just thanks for all the discussion today and being a great webinar audience. It's been really fun.
Thanks, Jill. As always, the stuff at the beginning is just so interesting and educational for me.
I always tell people that the secret to my getting a yes out of my boss, regardless of who my boss is to come in with all of the brain research and like all the science behind whatever the crazy, possibly expensive and or messy thing I want to do is. And the way I get a yes to any crazy idea I have is bringing in all this research.
That's so cool.
Saying, here
that is so cool. And actually, Pat is sitting here with me today, and I was saying how amazing you are, and she said, "Was she your student?" I said, yes, she was.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions for Jill? She answered all your questions, I think. I think she just answered everything.
I like to do the answers as we go. It's so hard when you save them for the end.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. This, again, was a terrific webinar. We knew it would be. And if we hope to see you again soon in another PCI webinar. So have a great afternoon, everybody.